Hey, y'all, I'm really excited to be here. Probably going to move this down, maybe? Just heavy?
Yeah.
So folks can see
What is going on with this thing?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So it's really, really awesome to be here with y'all today. Like Tasha said, I'm from North Carolina. I was born in Georgia, been living in North Carolina, struggling to help build a working class movement. I'm a member of the Durham branch of Workers' World Party. We have a branch of our organization down there as well, but also helping to build, trade union working class movement fight back across the South there in North Carolina. And it's really incredible to be in Michigan right now talking about right to work. The bastion, the trade union movement of the auto workers' struggles. And as a young person, I never saw picket lines. There wasn't industrialization. There wasn't. I didn't know what a union was. I thought it was like a credit union, a bank, or something until I was, literally 20. I didn't know because North Carolina is so less than 2% unionized, and so. What I want to talk a little bit about today is a little bit about some of the history and some of the significance of the South as a region in terms of what it means in terms of right to work being exported to Michigan, and then talking more about some of the ways that we organize to fight right to work, to kind of hopefully have a conversation around the kind of social movement, rank and file trade unionism that we're trying to build in the South, but also can be built. Our view is the only way out of this capitalist crisis for workers to have power, to have a voice, to have control over production, control over the economy as a whole. And so I guess I can just jump right into it, but feel free, to cut me off, as I go through some of these slides, and if you have questions about stuff, and everything. But as I mentioned, the South, one of the reasons that there hasn't been a lot of trade unions because it's always been underdeveloped. Very, not as much production. There are not as much, factories and industrial kind of jobs. And in the South is kind of still like a large region in terms of even what's happening in the capitalist economy with mass unemployment. We talk about, the masses of unemployment here in the city of Detroit because of the closing of the auto factories. The North Carolina has a very large unemployment rate, hovering around 10% still. Officially, right, which we know really for most, the reality is, most folks just get thrown off the books, and 20 to 30%, and if you're a black youth, 30 to 40%, who knows, but obviously the South in itself, which was the bastion of chattel slavery and of the historical exploitation, there that's happened. We have to also understand the significance of national oppression and racism as part of that, and part of the the political establishment that has always destroyed and attacked and denied basic democratic and political rights for workers and of course black folks and Native folks and oppressed people in the South. So you can go to the next slide. These aren't going to be these first couple ones are kind of just a lot of words, and hopefully this isn't too much. But just to kind of get some sense of the economy in the South and what's happening right now with the capitalist crisis, is that by 2000, 30%, so a lot of the manufacturing jobs have shifted to the South, right? They've left the industrialized cores of Buffalo and Detroit and gone down south where they can super exploit workers, super low wages, where there's non-unions. And in fact, there's actually more union members in the state of New York alone than there is in the entire 12 southern states. But just to give you a sense of the kind of decimation and the lack of organization, that workers face, in the South, while it is apparent that job generation has been weak, talking about what's happening with the economy right now with the collapse of the economy in 2008, there's still been a huge amount of investment. These foreign big capitalist corporations still see the South, despite that jobs and employment has been happening elsewhere. They've actually been investing more in the South, even throughout this crisis. The foreign direct investment has totaled, and this was a number that was about a year old now, so it's probably over 800 billion by now, in terms of the amount of direct investment just since 2008. I mean, just in those 3 years, from 2008 to 2010, 667 billion. And so, and this was even more than even the previous years of a couple of years in 2000, even before the crisis. So that during the crisis, while everyone is suffering, these big corporations are actually putting more money into developing capital and building, these big factories to super exploit workers in the South. And of course, it's manufacturing and finance are some of the biggest, the two biggest industries in the South. Of course, Charlotte, North Carolina is the home, we call it the Wall Street of the South. Wells Fargo has their West Coast, used to be Wachovia. Bank of America has their big, huge headquarters. So the kind of political center and the kind of the role the banks play in kind of attacking the political rights of the people and undermining the democratic struggles and union rights. Again, it's tied to these big bankers, the same struggles, right? And so Charlotte is always been a big hub of that. Charlotte, North Carolina, and so none of the 12 southern states have a minimum wage that's above the federal minimum wage. They're all $7.25. And two actually still have legally on the books minimum wages that are less than the federal minimum wage. Oh, they have to pay the federal, but they still kind of legally, just because they don't want to have to even say it in their state, they haven't even passed a law, right? The 10 lowest median incomes in the country, all 10 of the 10 states of the lowest median incomes are all in the South. The median income in 5 of the southern states is below 40,000. So like half of the people in our states make below 40,000 a year. And in North Carolina, you have to make about 45,000 just to pay for your basic needs. It's the living income standard. Yeah.
Could you say what those 12 southern states are? And can you tell, are they all right to work states? All 12?
Yeah, they're all right to work states. Yes. So all 12 southern states are right to work. They all have right to work. There's state laws, and I'll get into what that means. And I'm gonna break down a little bit for folks who don't know what right to work really means, what it actually is in real life. I'm gonna get into that a little bit. I think we're gonna get to it in a minute. I could kind of guess. North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Virginia, Texas, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Oklahoma, and Tennessee and Louisiana, I think. So 51% of all Texas, most workers make less than 33. So, states like Georgia and Texas have even low. I mean, West Virginia has the lowest wages in the country. West Virginia is of course, and Mississippi, of course. But West Virginia actually has the lowest average wage of workers in the country, as part of it. So anyway, we can go into this. Mississippi and Texas are the two states that have the average wage is lowest, but the average per income, the total per income of people in West Virginia is lower than Mississippi and Texas. But anyway, you can go to the next slide. So meanwhile, these big foreign companies, are buying land, $756 billion, and buildings and apartment, in the past, equipment in the past decade or so, and the corporations that still produce things like in Michigan and the big auto, they're always threatening. That's always the threat, right? Is if you don't get enough concessions, we're going to move down south where what the wages are. Hundreds of millions, and so in the southern states, the politicians play into this. They offer hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money that should go to school, that should go to roads, that should go to healthcare. They offer it straight to these corporations as an incentive to come. And super low tax rates, corporate tax rates. Our damn government right now wants to lower the tax rate again, about $200 million of additional tax breaks, to these big corporations. This is a way of creating jobs, right? And they say, what kind of jobs are you creating? If just create any jobs, is that okay? And so, the southern states, they're always fighting. North Carolina is always fighting South Carolina. They're always trying to underbid each other, to who can give the most money to these big corporations just to come. Hundreds of millions just to set up shop, and free land and no taxes. Louisiana and Alabama are currently in this bidding war. There's a big German steel company that's trying to bring a number of jobs to the area, and they're always bidding against each other. And they're offering over $1 billion The state government's offering $1 billion to a single corporation to come move there. When this kind of stuff happening, you know, like talking about de-investment from the needs of the people to support these vultures, these corporations. You know, and so the main finance is state, but also local, county and state governments. The city governments also throw in it, not just the state governments. All levels of the government are throwing into this, and this is particularly, you know, you see this underdevelopment that is part of, you know, the Black Belt area. These Black Belt cities and counties that particularly throw in, you know, huge concentrations in development lag behind, you know, in terms of schools, roads, ground wells, levees, bridges, hospitals. So this makes, so like we talk about Hurricane Katrina and Rita and all the natural disasters that happen, this makes us very, very vulnerable, you know, as well to these natural, quote unquote, natural disasters, you know, that's created. So you can go to the next slide. And so, you know, and this has been a difficulty, you know, of, you know, historically of the unions. You know, there was Operation Dixie in the 30s, you know, that in the 40s, it lasted a little while. You know, a lot of times workers, for instance, in a tobacco factory in Rocky Mount, you know, in 1946, I think they had their first ever, you know, a vote. You know, this is before work. This is before people could actually, black folks could have the right to actually vote in an actual election. That they could vote in a union election. And stuff, but the unions really did not do a good job, you know, having historically done a good job of overcoming this, you know, and of uniting the black workers with the white workers. The boss is always sowing these seeds, always, you know, the paternalism, you know, you hear about in the South of giving, you know, the white workers these crumbs and the kind of the way that they organize the workforce so that they're pitting workers against each other. But we have to overcome. We have to always fight, you know, to overcome these difficulties, and we are working to do that. You know, a majority of black folks in the country, 55% of black folks, I think it's probably more now, again, some of these numbers are about a year or two old, live in the South, live in these same 12 states. Folks are migrating back, you know, you hear about it all the time. So Mexicans and Latinos account for 16 billion. Yeah, so 20% of the population in the South is black. There's about 89 million people in the southern states. You know, the South is a major region of immigrants that come from all across Latin America. And North Carolina has had some of the fastest kind of growth recently, in the last couple of years, of immigration, of immigrant population from Latin America. And we also see the kind of concentration of these really repressive state laws, these secure communities, these 287G, where the federal, where the local sheriff, the local police are deputized to carry out immigration law and raid and detain people and you know, and set up checkpoints and all this stuff that happens in the Latino neighborhoods. You know, and of course, there's all these copycat laws to Arizona. You know, Arizona's you know, 1070, SB 1070 that's passed now in Georgia, Alabama. They're really on it right now in North Carolina. Might have even passed a couple other states in the last year or so. Yeah. Did you have a question?
Since the local governments take on budgets to give incentives to companies to come in.
Yep.
So if most of these companies come in and send Trump and everything, why don't the local governments take what they get out of companies and reinvest it back into it?
That's a great question. Often these agreements, these contracts are completely just open-ended. You know, they're not saying you have to employ these workers for 2 years or 10 years or permanently, or that if you leave, because you're right. Dell just got like 400 million or something from our state and set up and had like 500 jobs for 2 years and then just left. And it was like, oh, wait, what? So then what? There was nothing. They were just allowed to leave. You know, the Chiquita Banana came in, set up the international headquarters. You know, I said they're going to create these jobs. They brought in all the workers that paid, and there's like all these executives, I mean, like 80, 90, 200,000. They were all from out of state. They didn't hire anybody, you know, in terms of these big, you know. And so there's no, that they often is given this money, it's open-ended. Because they're so desperate, you know, and because they don't care about it. These politicians, they're getting money from these same corporations to run their political campaigns. They don't care about workers. They don't care about, you know, really hiring and directly giving people good jobs.
You say they're so desperate when you talk about the government.
The politicians, yeah.
But they know how it's structured. So why would they be desperate and they know the game?
Well, because they want to bring the corporations in, you know, because they say, oh, we brought all these jobs, you know, but then also they had this hand-in-hand relationship with the corporations directly, in terms of directly, you know, getting campaign financing, in terms of directly passing, you know, bills and the legislation that support them. So, you know, it's you know, I mean, it's a setup, you know, it's just, you know, yeah, I mean, it's outrageous. You can go to the next one. So racial divisions are the sharpest in the South, where people live, where people worship, you know, school, income breakdowns, women's rights, access to water, sewer systems. There's often huge, you'll see like these big circles in the middle of a city. You'll be like, wait, they don't have water or sewer? Like the city will just draw lines where they're called excluded communities, where they don't get any of the services, you know, the municipal services. And this happens all over. One of our comrades, Peter, that's in the party, is a civil rights attorney. Does a lot of work in the kind of black, rural, excluded communities that often will have this brackish water and all kinds of stuff, and sewer dump, you know, or people would set up a landmine. And this would be like right, if you naturally look at it, like this would be within the city limits. So they draw these lines to exclude these black and historically black places to be excluded from the protections of the city, but get dumped all the stuff, pollution and things dumped from the city's environmental racism. This is the idea of environmental racism that was actually born out of a struggle in North Carolina, where these big corporations would just come and dump, you know, PCBs on black-owned majority land up in Warren County, North Carolina. Levels of unemployment, incarceration rates, levels of structural political disenfranchisement. We're seeing all these levels of racial division and conflict. You know, so thus a powerful workers and trade union movement is critically needed in the U.S. South, and must promote a social movement, unionism, and we'll get into this more. It's anchored in the line in the working class. Struggle is led against black national women's oppression, immigrant oppression. This can be a transforming impact on the character of the U.S. and the entire U.S. labor movement, and the entire political movement in the U.S. So while this is happening, the capitalist restructuring, as we know, this number is probably higher now. Again, 5 million jobs have been eliminated in manufacturing over the country. Detroit and Michigan have been hit one of the hardest by this. I'm going to tell y'all. You know, because due to the increased, you know, industrial technology, and the industrial core still remains a major sector. There's a majority of economic activity. You know, hence it is a key power center of the capitalist system, thus making the U.S. South a key and essential area for revolutionary strategy. As y'all know, this was a picture from an action. You know, when all the attacks were happening in Wisconsin. The tax on public sector collective bargaining was happening. There was the AFL-CIO organized rallies all over the country. We were part of this day of action on April 4th, 2011, where our union helped kind of bring out a main base of black workers to participate in this movement. And this is a picture from, you can go to the next slide. In terms of public sector collective bargaining, this was before Michigan's law was passed and before Indiana's law was passed. I think this is after Wisconsin's law was passed. So 32 million workers do not have collective bargaining, which means there's no protections. That doesn't mean that that means that there's no framework for collective bargaining for 32 million workers. And
are those public workers?
Those are total private sector. 6.9 public workers, 6.9 million public workers. You know, there's about 20 million public government employees that do not have collective bargaining rights at all in the U.S. In the public sector, collective bargaining is uneven, and there'll be a chart. 26 states, just so you know, 26 states. It's actually now 28 states, including Wisconsin and Indiana. Oh no, I'm sorry. That number is now 24. I'm sorry. 24 states actually have, including D.C., provide comprehensive coverage. Only 24 states now. You know, and 12 states actually have laws that provide some framework for just some level of framework, not a comprehensive for all workers, but for some, like maybe the teachers have it, or maybe only the firefighters have it. But there's some framework for some level of workers. There's 10 states, all that are in the South, that have no framework at all. There's no public infrastructure. There's no, you know, state labor board where there's officially where workers can bring an arbitration or a grievance. There's no labor court. And there's 2 states, including where I live, North Carolina and Virginia, 2 states in the country where it's actually outright prohibited. It's banned. It's illegal to have collective bargaining. So worse than what's in Wisconsin is if the workers vote and have it, all the workers in a factory, I'm sorry, this is public sector, so all the workers, all the teachers, let's say, or all the mental health workers wanted to negotiate a contract, and the boss was like, let's just do it, let's just get this over with, y'all gonna, we got to get this thing running. They couldn't do it if they wanted to. It's banned by law. It's illegal. And that's North Carolina and Virginia. That's an old Jim Crow. It was passed in 1959 in our state. There was no black folks in the state government. It was all white folks, only 3 women. And the public sector was a big place of black folks working in the municipal jobs, working in the state jobs. And they were terrified of black folks having this political power in our state. In 1959, they banned it. So we call it a Jim Crow law that we're still fighting. It's still on the books. It's still banned. And I'll get into that in a little bit too. So this is a little bit, and again, this is, we now can see, we could probably take some of these ratings away. It's changed. This chart, I think, was made in late 2012, maybe, in terms of the states in collective bargaining. So, you see that in the Midwest and in the Northeast that have comprehensive collective bargaining laws that any public worker, there's a framework for it. And you start getting in lower in the southern Midwest a little less. There's no comprehensive framework, but there's some workers that have it, for instance, like in Texas or in Kentucky. But then you see in states, the yellow states, that's where there's no framework at all. There's just no law. It's just kind of out in the open, where workers kind of have to fight to enforce it. And I don't know why Virginia has a D, but North Carolina is a little worse than Virginia. But North Carolina and Virginia, again, are the 2 that is actually outright banned over here, as you can see. So you can see where this is concentrated, where these laws are concentrated, particularly in the U.S. South and in this region, and of course in the Southwest as well. So again, these are the states that we mentioned when we talk about the South. These are the 12 states that I talk about when I mean the South. And so these states do not have any framework, and the ones with the stars is actually banned. So this all, folks may say, well, where does right to work come from? How can this be legal? Are we supposed to have some basic rights, some democratic rights to union rights? Isn't this something that we should have? The freedom of association, and as we know, any law and anything that's on the books at all, it comes out of workers' struggle. Workers, occupying their factories, strikes of unemployed people, people fighting and demanding that these laws be put in place, under a capitalist system where again, it's run by the big corporations and serving their interests. Anything we have is always going to be only enforced by our struggle, but by in the streets and by putting the sticking it to, I guess, where the money is, right? And so there was major struggles and strikes of people all through the 1800s, craft clubs and all kinds of, the Knights of Labor and all kinds of forms of labor organization that fought before there was any laws to have some kind of power as workers, to be treated fairly, to be, given a portion of their wages, so that these big corporations wouldn't just keep all the profits from their production. And there was major struggles, and of course in 1934 was one of the biggest years where there's 3 major national strikes. The textile workers, led out of Gastonia, North Carolina, and Laredo Mills, over 100,000. There's a national textile workers strike, which just lit up the country. There was a big, you heard about the Teamster strike. In Minneapolis was a big strike, and of course in San Francisco, the dock workers and the city workers basically had a general strike that shut down all of San Francisco in 1934. And of course the auto light in Toledo, the auto workers played a major role in 1934, beginning their stuff, and then they later had their sit down in Flint. But this all culminated and helped build it, and there was other major struggles of workers, really at the point of production, right where the big corporations are making their money, that said we need recognition, we need power, we want to negotiate around the terms and conditions of our work, how you're treating us. So in 1934, the government was forced to sign the National Labor Relations Act. 1935 was put into law. A federal government, could a very comprehensive law that made it so that these corporations were forced to negotiate, and it was enforced by the federal government. immediately big business and commerce went crazy. They're like, oh my, what the hell? Like, this is our right. Shouldn't we have the right to like exploit these workers and take as much money? So there was all kinds of, they filed, all kinds of lawsuits and said this was unconstitutional. How could these, we own this property, we own this factory, and the workers like, no, we own it, we built it. Who really owns it? And this was the struggle, right? And so, and 12 years later, finally, these Southern politicians, mostly that led this fight, and said, again, because they still were attached to slavery, they still were attached to, black folks, we don't want you to right to vote, we don't want no workers to have no power, we don't want women to have any power, there's no way that we're going to let you, run this factory or have some say in that. And so they, these two Southern politicians, Taft, who was the son of the President William Taft, and Hartley, out of Kentucky, I think, passed a bill that was called Taft-Hartley, which was really, really, really devastating, and labor really failed to kind of really challenge and overturn in 1947 that put in place right-to-work laws, that put in place a whole series of laws that allows state governments to basically make whatever laws they want for public employees, and things and stuff. And you can go to the next slide. And Taft-Hartley, this is what Taft-Hartley did. It did all these things and actually more. This is like what was written into the law in terms of 1947. If workers tried to go on strike, that they could get injunctions. The bosses could get injunctions to force them to work. It limited, the amount that workers could actually have mass pickets to challenge grievances. There was you couldn't do a secondary boycott. You couldn't. It limited how unions could contribute to the political system in terms of contributions. All these things it did. It really tried to really strike at the heart of a lot of workers' power. Yes.
What is a secondary boycott?
It's a good question. A secondary boycott. So, for instance, this is something the party worked on in the 70s. There was a big textile, a denim factory in Texas. To say there's a bunch of immigrant workers working in the factory. They're getting run over and treated bad. And those denim jeans are sold in the J.C. Penney's, right? And so what a secondary boycott means is that you can't boycott J.C. Penney's to support the textile workers at the textile factory that are being ripped off. And so basically, a corporation that contracts from another corporation, you can't boycott that second corporation that contracts them out.
Who the workers cannot? Who can?
The community, the workers, nobody. Nobody can.
The unions can.
The unions can. Yeah, sorry, the unions can. Yeah, that's right. As a community, we can do whatever. Yeah, right. That's right. I'm sorry. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. The union itself can't organize a boycott of JCPenney. Right. That's important. Yeah, that's right. But we the people, we can always organize a boycott whenever we want. Yeah, that's right. They can't stop us from doing that. But they said that the unions can't politically, so yeah.
What I was going to say is
Yeah.
that the citizens.
Absolutely, yes. We have a right to freedom of association. We have that right. I mean, we can do it. Absolutely, yeah.
But I did want to mention that there have been cases, like for example, the NAACP, that have called for boycotts and they've been sued. Over that
Right,
some years ago.
Right,
Yeah,
that's right.
saying that they didn't have a right, to call for boycotts. So I
That's
think
right.
It didn't hold up in court, but
That's right.
I'm sure
They'll come after you. So, for instance, right now there's a major campaign. One of the biggest sector in North Carolina is agricultural workers. They, these big, migrant, these big slave holders still bring in all tens of thousands of migrant workers, guest workers into North Carolina and across the South. And tobacco is a big thing right now. And the Farm Labor Organizing Committee, which we work very closely with, is organizing tobacco workers. And so, for instance, there's a major campaign to go after, the variety wholesalers of the Kangaroo gas stations that sell the Marlboro and that sell all the cigarettes that R.J. Reynolds makes. But Flock technically couldn't call a boycott. But we organize, and we used to organize demonstrations, and we have pickets, and we have everything in front of the gas station and everything else. So all these things, came out of Taft-Hartley. And one of the big things, which I'm going to get to, which is kind of what right to work technically really means, is this question of an open shop. And so what right to work, for folks who want to know what right to work means, the way we explain it is that, let's say, for instance, we're all members of a fraternity. Right, we all go. There's a really nice building, like this great building. You know, we all party there. We all have friends. We all get the benefits, the social benefits. We can network, you know, of this fraternity. But like any church, like any organization, you got to pay your dues to keep it going, right? And so what Right to Work says, it says, y'all come on party, come on down, come hang out. You're all gonna get we're gonna guarantee all you know the benefits. You can all hang out, y'all be part of the fraternity, but you don't have to pay, right? So eventually, a couple of us start saying, well, shoot, you're not gonna pay. I'm not gonna pay. I can still come hang out, get dinner, get all the benefits. I'm not gonna pay. And eventually, one by one, people stop paying, and then all of a sudden the union. The fraternity has significantly less money, significantly less members, and it deteriorates, the ability of the union to really operate, because it allows, it allows that, and so what that also means is it takes a ton of work. Is that the union then has to spend tons of its time not doing political education with its members about how the capitalist system works, or how what this grievance works, and what's really fair in terms of studying this policy or studying this law, or fighting and empowering us politically in our society. Instead, the union has to spend all this time administering and trying to convince its members every year, all the time, we need you to stay in. Come on, I know it's hard, the economy's rough, I know none of your family members are still employed, but we need you to pay the dues. We need you to pay dues. So the unions are forced to spend all this time and resources on what we call servicing and organizing. When in reality, it should just be, you got a union shop, you're in the union, you pay your service, you pay your fair share, and then the union's strong, right? And you have your democratic input, all this stuff. But the union is also required, and if they have a contract, to actually take care of you and handle your grievances and do everything else. But you're required to pay your fair share. So this is what Right to Work does.
Yeah.
So it cuts out the neck, of the supply lines, of the unions, and their abilities to organize and have power and to have the time to focus, on the real needs of the working class, rather than just chasing, going to someone's house and trying to chase them down and get them off work and to convince them, like, come on. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Dante, is it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Dante, right. Yeah, and I appreciate your presentation so far. I'm learning a lot. Yeah. I've got a couple of questions though.
Absolutely.
Those 12 states in the South.
Yes, ma'am.
You showed the graph earlier.
You
A
can
lot
go back.
of
Go back.
well, okay.
Either way, you good.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm reminded of the Confederacy.
Yep.
Of course,
Yep.
Confederacy. And I'm also reminded of how after the end of the Civil War, black people, former slaves, had a lot of skills
Absolutely. Yeah.
because they had been doing a lot of work.
Yeah.
Making horseshoes, blacksmithing,
Yeah.
building homes, constructing,
Yeah.
this, that. They were very skilled people.
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
At that time, according to my understanding, shortly after that time, trade unions came into being,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
consisting mostly of white people,
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote white people, who did not want to compete with all those skilled black workers.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So they organized these trade unions to protect quote unquote white labor.
Mm-hmm.
I can't help but think that history, that fact, has a legacy
Yeah.
that operates now in the trade union movement.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a big thing that we gotta root it out and fight. We gotta fight inside. But at the same time, the union at our workplace is the only organization that we have that actually fights in our interests in general. So we have to, as workers, as white workers, as black workers, we have to fight to get rid of the opportunists and get rid of the business unions, as we call it, people that are going to sell us out and have their racist policies and allow discrimination to happen. We have to inside fight, to build, to overcome that. Absolutely, yeah.
I agree with you. Do you all have like strategy meetings about that? Because in my view, there seems to be a lot of people still in denial, among the union leadership about the historic roots of the union.
Yes.
And
yes.
I guess that's why we now have right to work here in Michigan. But one more point.
Yeah.
I don't have to do it now. I can wait later. But I can't help but think about about how much, unfortunately, the role of white supremacy plays in this article.
Yes.
Now, I'm of the opinion, like Theodore W. Allen, that this so-called system of white supremacy is a ruling class formation for social control.
That's right. That's right.
You know, it's very useful
That's very useful.
for the ruling class to divide people up on that black-white dichotomy. And also, you know, it sucks a lot of white people in.
That's right.
And they get hurt by the shit themselves.
That's right. When there's low wages in the factory, you know, when a black worker is making $8 an hour and the white worker is making, you know, $8.50 an hour, you know, they'll tell the white worker, at least you're not making $8 an hour like that. But the black worker, he's still making $8.50. He still can't pay. He still ain't got no health insurance. He's still getting ripped up. You know, so you know, it absolutely, you know, the system of white supremacy, it affects white workers and white poor people, you know, too. I mean, it affects black workers the most. You know, but we as, you know, the entire working class has an interest in fighting white supremacy and overcoming that, you know, for all of our liberation, you know, over that. You know, when when in Reconstruction, you know, when there was efforts to build a fusion party, you know, when actually in North Carolina, you know, there was efforts of black folks and white folks to work together to have established political power, a political bloc, you know, against the white landowners and supremacists. You know, the white supremacists made sure they found the most racist, you know, amongst the workers, you know, to drive this violent, you know, and they had violent, you know, coups. Like in 1898, they had a violent, they came in and murdered, you know, all the black, you know, elected officials and chased them out of town and burned down the black-owned newspaper so there was no power, and terrorized the white workers. Don't associate with them because we're going to come after you next, you know. In Wilmington in 1898. Yeah, you know, so this stuff happens, you know, as a way to white supremacists to maintain their power and to divide us, to divide the working class. Absolutely. That's an excellent question. And hopefully we can get into that strategy. I got some stuff on here, but you want,
I think there, we had a meeting just a little while ago. I think this is something similar to what the government, Snyder is using with being. In other words, with the, does that be the city council, where it had come up to, do you want to make so much money and keep your staff member, or you'll make half as much money and you can have more staff members? So they have a choice on that. But notice they'll be making less pay and they can have more staff members, or they can make more pay and just have one staff member.
Acting like, yeah. So you're always choosing. You got to cut one leg off or the other. Either way, you know, you only got one leg. Yeah, right.
And it's dividing, and I don't.
Absolutely.
In other words, well, we're going now somewhere that, as far as I'm concerned, this is about democracy and emergency managers should be exist.
That's right. Absolutely. It's the same struggle. You can go ahead and keep going. Okay, so yeah.
Do they allow for dues deduction
So we'll get into some of that. So what we've had to do, you know, is to say, okay, so you ban, so we can't actually sit down and negotiate a collective bargaining, a union contract, which means anything on the work for folks, you know, I know there's some young folks and folks, you know, I didn't know what a union was and all the contract, but like, you know, when you got a union contract, it covers, you know, you basically any term and condition of work, you know, like around like your sick days, your holidays, you know, sometimes scheduling things, you know, what kind of, you know, obviously your pay, your benefits, you know, these things you can negotiate, and all the terms and conditions of work and your compensation you negotiate in a contract, and you as a worker sit down on one side of the table and the boss is on the other, and you negotiate a contract. We can't negotiate and actually sign a legal contract. That's what's illegal. That act of signing the contract, right? But short of that, we had to be creative and find ways for our union to exist. So fighting, you know, to make sure that our workers are at least sitting at the table and bringing our demands forward. They may not be able to sign a contract, but we're going to damn make sure that we're at the table and making sure that they're hearing from our members, right? And the workers are leading that, right? Or for instance, like demanding other kind of policy and just like any kind of community, it's kind of almost like any kind of social community struggle where you just got to put public pressure on these jokers to expose their policies. You know, so for instance, you know, the question of payroll deduction, so that we can have some dues, because you know, we've had to fight. You know, it took us 10 years to fight. You know, to put in place, you know, an executive order. You know, it's still not a law. It's actually just an executive order that's still in place. That, you know, the governor said, you know, okay, well, you know, maybe I see with the benefit. You know, there's all these issues. Maybe, you know, we should at least deal with this a little bit. Let's let this union at least take the dues out of the check of the members if the workers want. And so we have that, you know, so the workers can then sign a form and the dues can come out the paycheck and come to their union. But that's under attack right now. I mean, of course, you know, like they tried to. The North Carolina was so arrogant that there was a big rally, about 4,000 teachers 2 years ago, right before they laid off 9,000 teachers in our state. You know, as part of the state budget, and the teachers came out rallying against it. And the next day at midnight, the state government passed a bill that took away their payroll deduction. So the teachers union can have no payroll deduction at all, and they're forced to collect. And then now the unions are bill, even worse, the union's a damn bill collector. You got to go around saying, you owe me my dues every damn month, every member, you got to go around. And so again, you're not able to have the political discussions in advance and proactively organize and fight for your interests. You got to always be servicing this. Come on, just give me, okay, you got the 12 bucks, okay, what you got in your pocket? 9 bucks, okay, let's see. You know, you go through that stuff, right? And it just wastes your time, and it becomes this whole stressful thing. And so, but, you know, since they were dumb enough just to target the teachers, that, you know, whatever, there was some big struggle, and, you know, actually the teachers union ended up aligning with some right-wing judges, to, you know, but they were able to get the courts to uphold it, that they couldn't do it because they just if they had attacked all the public workers, then the judge might have let it happen, you know, because they just said the teachers only can't have dues. Because the state employees, there's a kind of right-wing, it's really interesting politics, you know, there's this really right-wing state employees association that has about 60,000 members. They charge them $3 a month. They offer them a hot dog party and maybe a ticket to the theme park. It's like all you get, you know. But they have this advocacy organization, you know, that technically is supposed to, you know, advocate, you know, and they have dudes that dress in suits and go downtown and talk. Meanwhile, the workers aren't empowered at all to really have any. They don't handle individual grievances or fights. And so this kind of state employees association is they have, even with the Republicans, they have an alliance that's kind of helped us, give us a little bit of cover to get payroll deduction, so at least our union has payroll deduction coming up.
So this you speak about North Carolina.
North Carolina, yeah.
I thought that was one of the states that was prohibited.
So it's prohibited from having a union contract,
All the time.
but we have, but all what that means, kind of piece by piece, we fight to implement those individual pieces aren't necessarily, like payroll deduction isn't banned by law. Just because it's right to work and just because collective bargaining is illegal, there isn't yet a law that says payroll deduction is illegal, right? And so again, that doesn't mean they won't do that, but we have to build a broad struggle to defend that. Like basically, our relationship with the NAACP and some of the big mass organizations in the state have helped defend that in the past when they wanted to raise the bar, said you need 40,000 members to qualify, all this kind of crazy stuff, you know. And so, but again, it's through building a mass struggle in the community with the churches and folks to kind of really help to put pressure on these politicians to deal with this stuff that we've been able to maintain at least a little bit of some relationship and union power. And we'll go into that. Maybe we can get to this slide in the next. So yeah, we'll get into that. So what we're doing now is we're building a kind of this is a poster for this broad formation that our union helped form. It's called the Southern Workers Assembly, as a way to kind of bring forth different unions together, because oftentimes unions will be fought, like the UFCW will fight only at the pork plant, or you know the farm workers will only fight at tobacco. So we've been trying to do is like really kind of tie all the working class organizations, because all of us are lacking rights, and so we have to form a broad, kind of like the civil rights movement, form a broad social movement in the community to put economic and political pressure on the elected officials and the corporations. We got to build that around workers' rights, but led by workers themselves. So we've been building the Southern Workers Assembly. These are some of our demands on a poster. Of course, Dr. King, who was killed, in 1968, standing with Memphis, sanitation workers. They were fighting for the right to collectively bargain, and we still don't have, in North Carolina all these years later. You go to the next slide. This is actually a picture of the big assembly that we had during the Democratic National Convention. We challenged the Democrats. They're coming to North Carolina where all these dang laws on the books, and Democrats are supposed to support workers. They don't. And so we challenged them and had this big, brought in all these workers from all around the region that came and gave testimony, about the conditions and about the need to repeal Taft-Hartley, to repeal right to work, to have all workers should have the right to collectively bargain, whether you're a domestic worker, a farm worker, or whatever. This is a big kind of struggle up on the top left of the, you might have heard of the Charleston Five, that in 2000 had a major struggle. A bunch of black dock workers in Charleston, South Carolina, that do have a contract. They're private sector, so they do have a union contract, but they the bosses wanted to stop them from getting their rights, and they had put a whole 100 or so cops in front, and had locked them out of work, and like refusing to allow the workers to come to work, and so they marched on and were beaten by the cops, and 5 of them were put on house arrest for about a year or two. There was a major struggle. They actually ended up winning and prevailing. This kind of racist governor that had the Confederate flag flying, over the state capitol and stuff, that they eventually fought back as well. But we're trying to build this kind of broad social formation, which we'll get into a little bit in the next couple of slides around. So what we kind of do is this is some things to think about in terms of ways that we can organize. This goes to some of the questions y'all are asking around how this stuff works. Is some of the ways that we've built a kind of broad fight back, again, to engage and empower the rank and file, the members, the workers themselves, right? Because we can't be reliant on a contract, on a union contract, to get us our rights and to get us paid and to get us our job back if we get fired. We have to rely on a real struggle and a real social organization. And so a lot of what we do is actually non-majority, and that's something that actually UE was the first. We did first in North Carolina, actually in some diesel factories, where we said, because a lot of times people think about, well, we're going to organize a union, and we're going to have a union election, and we got to get 50% of the workers to vote yes, and then this union is going to represent them, and we're going to be able to negotiate a contract. We say, what if you can't get 50%? What if the climate is so bad? What if the racism is so bad? Or what if it's just so bad that we can't get 50% of the workers? Those workers still deserve to have organization of some form. And so we were the first ones in the 80s that did this kind of non-majority. And a lot of unions laughed at us and said, y'all crazy, y'all need contracts and blah, blah, blah. And now we're seeing a lot of unions are going, to organize non-majority union, because it's the only way forward. We have to have some level of organization. We still fight to win the majority, to get a contract if we can. But in the meanwhile, we got to defend the interests of the working class workers at the workplace. And you can win all kinds of stuff. Like, for instance, one of the ways that we organized as a creative tactic when we started organizing a factory was that we organized around a paid Martin Luther King holiday. That was the first demand. We said, we got all these demands, we need wages and everything, but one of the things that can unite the workers is a paid Martin Luther King holiday. It's a political demand, too. And so we put in a petition, had the workers demand a paid holiday, and struggled and fought. And we won it in several of these places, where the bosses were forced to give the workers a paid day off on Martin Luther King Day. So then the workers realized, oh, what is this, damn, these workers got power, we can win things, got a paid holiday, but it's Dr. King Day. So then on that Dr. King Day, we spend it in struggle. We're marching, we're talking about what Dr. King stood for, and so it kind of helps unite workers around their power, around something concrete. And that's kind of a way that we often kick off a campaign. That's one of the kind of creative tactics we've used, in this non-majority way, to kind of show the power of the workers without a contract. We can still win things, right? And another way, this big thing we've kind of been doing recently, is around basically what we call workers' Bill of Rights campaigns, where we may not be able to get all the health insurance we deserve, or all the sick days, or the staffing, or the safety, or the wages that we deserve. But what are some of the basic bills? What are some of the basic things that we deserve, right? And so we write out every workplace, like all safety, staffing, write out what that would be. And then we fight for those one by one. A lot of folks have heard about living wage campaigns. That's an example. That's kind of an example of like wages. As a living wage as a right. It should be a basic right. And you fight for. You may not get the corporation, but you can fight and get the town or the city or the state government to pass an ordinance that requires all corporations to pay a wage. Or you can get the state government. What we're doing is fighting for a major state mental health workers bill of rights that would basically require the state to say to lift the floor, the conditions of the workers, and to say maybe you can't negotiate a contract, but you can put in the state law if you want, in terms of like what the patient to staff ratios are, what kind of safety training, what kind of things, and so we force them to actually put into state law or ordinance or city or county ordinance, right? So then you're almost negotiating through public pressure to force them to make public policy that is almost like a contract, right? And so we force these kind of, but put it in this term, this popular term, or these bill of rights, that people like and they can chew on a little bit. And we had bills submitted, in the Senate and the House and the state government. We have, ordinances in different cities. We're fighting on these to fight these to become law. We haven't won any of these to become law, but they're very good agitational political demands, and the workers can come and you can have public hearings and give testimony about these needs and draw out and really expose and call them out. Again, they're not going to sign a contract to lock in the exact rate, but they're going to say, they can pass something that kind of helps uplift it overall. And again, and these are a couple where we say, you can't have collective bargaining in itself, but what does collective bargaining really get the workers? Let's break down what that really gets you, right? Oh, it gets you the right to meet, confer with your boss over the issues. Okay, so let's make sure we force the boss to meet with us every 3 months. Let's get enough power where the boss is forced to sit down and at least address it. They may not sign an agreement, but we organize a delegation of reverends to go in the church, or press conference to expose the asbestos in the wall or whatever. You're still building worker organization and forcing to meet with you, or you can use public information requests like Moratorium has. Put in a FOIA request to request public documents, so that these documents are public. And then you bring it back to the union meeting and let the workers then digest. Oh, what was the budget of this facility? Oh, okay, they spent $200,000 on televisions and carpet. Is that in the interest of the workers? No, they should spend $200,000 on our raises. And so the workers can then begin to analyze, the decisions that their bosses are making, and it empowers people to make direct decisions over their lives and impact and challenge that. Even having a meeting at the workplace, like demanding that the boss, lets the workers meet on lunch, or meet, in the break room, or in some, conference room to have a union meeting, have a training, to train our stewards, and we win that all over the state. Again, they don't formally recognize us, but they allow me to come in and our other stewards to come in and train and deal with, building the union and empowering our workers to have meetings. Representation. If you get fired or written up, again. Sending delegations of workers in to represent you and help to deal with fines. And we just won another brother his job back last week. Payroll deduction, all this stuff. So you can do this without collective bargaining. It's just a matter of what kind of creative tactics, what kind of community pressure. Even if they got right to work, it makes it harder because again, it's not put in a contract, so we can't rest. But it's kind of always a constant struggle. And then one of the big things we've been doing has been building this kind of standing kind of labor, faith, civil rights kind of community coalition and board, where in different areas around the state we have relationships with different ministers or civil rights leaders, community leaders, or patient advocates or children's advocates that meet with the workers and almost serve as like a labor board. Maybe the state won't set up a labor board, that will enforce our rights, but we'll set up our own labor board. And then we'll force that institution to recognize it as having moral authority over the decisions you make. So then we bring a grievance to this board, and then they with the workers, bring it in. And because of public pressure, because they look like such dogs and jerks for not acknowledging it, they're forced to deal with it a little bit, right? And so you can establish this. And this is also what the Farm Labor Organizing Committee, because as you'll know, going back to the history, in 1935, when the National Labor Relations Act was signed, there was a very comprehensive act protecting workers' rights. There was two sets of workers. Do y'all know who those were that were actually written out of law because of the racism?
And domestic workers.
Agricultural workers and domestic workers are written out. They were both black workers, right? Agricultural and domestic workers, and so they're still written out. And so, but which means that these corporations, that there's no legally, they don't have to. There's no federal board to enforce them negotiating a contract, and so FLOC has gotten creative and created their own community boards. FLOC is a Farm Labor Organizing Committee, which organizes agriculture and migrant workers. And they actually got them to sign a collective bargaining union contract representing 5,000 agricultural workers in our state. You know, forced them to because of public pressure, and forced them to recognize a board that they set up, an independent board, right? Even though there's no state law that says you can do it, they force them to do it through public pressure. And so we can build these things. You can go to the next slide. So you know, this is the only way forward. You know, we have to build a struggle. We have to. The workers have to be empowered. You know, it has to be tied to the social needs of the people. You know, this is what we call rank and file social movement unionism. You know, it has to have constant propaganda that's engaging the community and engaging people and targeting, you know, these big corporations and forces of global capital and elected officials. You know, and we have to constantly be public with demonstrations at, you know, at City Hall, at Chamber of Commerce, at state legislature, at labor camps, at offices, at the homes of these big corporate CEOs, you know, and demanding our rights, demanding they recognize the union, demanding they recognize the attack, you know, stop the attacks on the living standards. They stop cuts. They don't privatize these services, and they recognize and collectively bargain, you know, with our chosen representatives, you know, our workers' representatives. Here, next slide. Anyway, this is a couple examples. You don't have to go into this. These are just some of the members, you know, of the Southern Workers Assembly that we use as kind of these speak outs to kind of draw out some of the conditions. You know, you see 2% union density in North Carolina, about 6% in Virginia. And some of the main issues, you know, downsizing, privatization, low wages, denial of collective bargaining, you know, long hours, representation. You can go to the next one. We actually won payroll deduction, so we actually won payroll deduction. The city of Charlotte, we forced them through our mass picketing, led a lot by the work of the party and the labor comrades coming down and supporting. The city of Charlotte was forced to recognize our union and actually grant payroll deduction. We're now actually, when I leave Detroit, I'm going straight to Charlotte to have a big organizing campaign. We just won that.
Now, you're speaking of excuse me, some of the demands that y'all won through organizing. Even though you don't sign a contract, there's no actual right to bargain, put public pressure on. So my question is, all these different demands that y'all won must have a collective effort, a cross section of people. That's what be lacking, you know, the turnout. You must have a broad section of people that was on board, you know, people that didn't even have any skin in the game. Right. Or not even
That's
workers.
Right. That's right. Yeah. Community allies and putting public pressure. Absolutely. I mean, it has to be led by the workers. Workers have to be empowered, you know, to go and meet with NAACP leader and meet with their church leader and hold them accountable too to the demands of the workers and the needs, the social needs of the people. Because again, coming out of the working class, you know, the needs, you know, will emerge. But then we have to build those relationships for them to come with us and to raise our demands with us. Yeah.
Because you said you would like embarrass them, call them out, some of the demands of
right.
What's going on. But what I see now, embarrassment don't work. Because
right.
people
Sure.
say, well, they don't
Sometimes.
get it. You know, they disconnected. I'm saying some of the
right.
ruling class and 2%ers or 1%ers actually controlling the, like the bank CEOs, and people say they don't get it or they're disconnected. I see they don't even care. They're not trying to get it. They know people are hurting, and they know what they're doing because production is high. You know, production
right.
is off the scale,
yeah.
and most of the profit from gain from production is going,
yeah.
you know, about 98% to the top. So people say, well, they just don't get it, but I don't believe that. They just don't really care. So I'm wondering how. Yeah,
we have to stop them where they do care, right? You know, when workers stop working. You know, when the roads stop moving, when the capital starts moving, when the patients aren't treated in the facilities, when that's at least threatened, you know, then that's what we as the workers have power in our labor, right? And part of it is teaching and reminding workers of our power and our labor in that, which is why we as workers can lead the way, you know, in changing all of society and all this stuff. So but it's not easy. I'm not saying this is it. Trust me, this is like not at all easy. It's very difficult. People got personalities, you know, all kinds of stuff. I mean, you got to, if you're saying every person, you got to build that relationship, find out, you know, where their weakness is, you know, something that can expose them that they don't want to know about, you know, what kind of contradiction, you know, and because what we have to do then is then divide them from their buddy, the rich folks from each other, right? Because they're trying to divide us, so our tactic is to divide them. Sometimes they have their own contradictions, right? Maybe one of them wants to raise, the corporate load of corporate tax, and maybe another one, wants to, privatize this park, right? And maybe this one has an interest in that park, and maybe this one has an interest in not raising. So you got to find those contradictions, and we got to drive their division. That's how we win too, right? It's part of that strategy. But anyway, you can see, again, some of the conditions that these workers are speaking out about around the South and part of our Southern Workers Assembly, and the low density rates, mostly below 5% in all these states. Arkansas 4.2%, Mississippi 5%. These are all right to work. There's a big poultry victory in Arkansas. You can go ahead. This is Ken Riley, who is a really one of the best working class heroes in the South in the country. One of the leaders of the Charleston Five, a dock worker in Charleston, that is leading a big campaign inside the ILA to really transform and democratize the union and to have a more progressive. They just signed a new contract, but he's they've been building international relationships with dock workers around the world. And to kind of help, again, where they're weak, to put pressure on them and expose. We actually did an action. Y'all heard in Bangladesh, about 100 workers were burned alive. They were locked in the factory a couple months ago, I think maybe in November or something. And we had worked through Occupy, but also Occupy New York. We found where the boat was coming to New York and then to Charleston. It was unloading half the goods in New York and half the goods in Charleston. Occupy New York tried to set up a community picket. People, Cheryl, some of the Thompson Cummins were there. But the security guards moved them away, and the workers were able to keep going. We were able to build it up. We had a couple of days more. We had a little bit closer relationships with, again, not officially, because they can't officially be part of it, but they did. Is that we set up a community picket in front of the road that morning, and we alerted the union that we were going to be there, and they made sure their workers knew to honor the picket line. So the workers refused to cross the picket line, joined us, and so the whole port of Charleston was shut down for 3 hours, in solidarity with these Bangladeshi workers. Cost them $5 to $10 million. It's about $60 million a day. So 2 to 3 hours is a lot of money. And these workers, joined us, joined our picket line, it didn't. They don't want you to know that.
It was in Workers' World, though.
It was in our newspaper. So you can deal with that, and that was in South Carolina, in crazy South Carolina.
So that factory over in Bangladesh, that was a garment, wasn't it? Garment.
Yeah, Walmart and Russell and all these big.
Walmart, yeah, because they kind of.
Yeah, these big. Yeah, all these big corporations. You can go to the next slide. But anyway, but we have part of I'm almost done, and then we can get into more. This has been great, back and forth. We have to build, a united national movement to repeal Taft-Hartley. When Wisconsin was under attack, when Michigan was under attack, when Indiana, when Ohio, there was never a question of organize the South. There's never a question of where this racist, where these attacks were coming from.
That's right.
None of these, labor leaders said, we got to organize the South. Oh, you're right. There's been years we've neglected. All these policies are now being exported back to hurt us. We got to correct that, wrong. We got to organize and understand, the leading role of black workers. They never said that. That wasn't their vision. They said, oh, maybe we can do a recall election and get a new governor, right? That's as far as they went. And so we said, we got to build a nationally united movement to demand, the repeal of these laws and to build a united campaign to organize the South. These are very connected. So you can go to the next one. And part of this is directly tied to, also a failure to understand the significance, of the international working class and of international solidarity. And again, of using that also as a tool, because workers around the world are a lot more organized and prepared and are militant than we are here in the United States. You saw India about went on the general strike. You saw, all over. You see, Grenada. You see these workers all over in the world. And he's shutting down. And standing up for the basic social demands sometimes too. And so. We can't operate and just rely on collective bargaining, rely on our contracts anymore. We have to fight to empower the rank and file. We have to see this as part of the human rights movement. you know, of a human rights movement, the basic needs, you know, of our people. And then this was one of our union members, Rebecca Hart, a sister who was fired in a mental health institution who we fought about 2 years and got her job back. This is her marching with us in Birmingham, Alabama, at the Southern Human Rights Organizing Conference in 2010. And so, 2000, yeah. And so, you know, and we have to connect it to, you know, you know, the bosses think we're crazy, but I mean, we'll write a grievance and we'll put in there the 13th Amendment. We'll put in there, you know, these international, you know, cite, you know, the United Nations, you know, laws and charters, you know, of, you know, you know, we'll cite this stuff. The Declaration of Human Rights will cite this and to our bosses to show, you know, you're violating our fundamental basic, you know, who cares what these crazy racists and Raleigh and the state government say? We have an obligation to us as humans, these fundamental human rights that you have to respect. And we know these, and we're not going to just run them over. And so we put that out there, you know, and we fight this stuff and file it. You can go to the next slide. And so there's two major important rulings that we helped fought. And this isn't just theoretical. We went in 2005, our national union appealed to the United Nations International Labor Organization and said, we are, these basic human rights to collective bargaining and all these things, that freedom of association, of discrimination are being denied. And they sent in lawyers from all these countries around the world, and we organized major public hearings. And we had public workers, you know, low wage, you know, poor rural workers come and speak out about, you know, deadheads and all this kind of crazy, nasty, you know, things and breathing this air and all this that they had to deal with, these conditions. The United Nations, they ruled, the ILO ruled in March of 2007 that North Carolina is in violation of international labor. And these are some workers right here holding the cover page of this ruling at a big rally we had to say, hey, y'all better recognize this ruling of the freaking United Nations. You know, we brought it around. The state government said, well, you know, no, there goes the United Nations. We don't care. It's all right as states to do it. We can do it. Our governor, a Democratic governor. Democratic House, Democratic Senate, vast majority in both chambers, and the damn governor said, it's our right to do this. You know, then we took it every 5 years. These rulings are reviewed in Geneva by the, it's called the Universal Periodic Review. We sent workers to Geneva, Switzerland to get on their butts to follow that, to make sure they took it up. They took it up. They brought it to Obama. We met with Hilda Solis and Obama in D.C., and Obama said, oh, I'm sorry, it's a states' rights issue. I can't get involved. That's all I said. Hilda Solis and Obama both said this. So the struggle continues. And next, so we took it then to you know, again, Clinton, you know, job crushing Clinton and welfare killing Clinton. He created NAFTA, which destroyed all these jobs and free trade agreement and, you know, everything. And as a side agreement, as kind of a way, I think, of them to kind of attack Mexico, they were forced to sign what's called the North American Agreement of Labor Cooperation, NALC, which is actually a legal thing that they signed that dealt with labor conditions. They said, we can't trade with your country if you don't have these basic labor standards, right? Right? And so we said, okay, well, I guess they can't be trading with us then. It's already got these labor standards. So we fought, and we organized with the FOT, which is a big independent trade union in Mexico. About 51 union organizations from all across Mexico, Canada, and the United States filed a complaint with NALC. And out of Mexico City, the NALC office ruled that, oh, wait a second, you're violating this thing. And this was just last November. They brought this ruling and told the Department of Labor, well, what are we going to do? You're violating these trade standards. And you don't need to address these issues. You know, freedom of association, the right to organize, collective bargaining, minimum conditions of work, elimination of discrimination at work, equal pay for men and women, prevention of occupational injuries and diseases, and compensation for occupation. And this was from, you know, again, from us challenging and exposing and using this international framework that said we have these basic human rights to dignity, to control our work, to be compensated for our work, and to have power in our workplace and a voice in it. And so, anyway, so the struggle continues. That's some of the work we've been doing. Hopefully these things can be applied to the struggle. It's coming here. It is here. The chickens have come home to roost. It's time for us to build a struggle, to organize the South, to organize the unorganized everywhere, and to unite and fight. So thanks, y'all.
Or not.
You can check out our website, southernworker.org. That's for the Southern Workers. That's the main vehicle we're trying to organize a lot of this stuff through. But yeah. So I don't know if you have any questions or